If you're like most folks Dr. Kris Fusterhausen works with, you're active, you want to take ownership of your health, and you want to age gracefully. The problem is there is so much conflicting information out there about health and wellness, it's tough to know who to trust. Most providers are limited by what insurance will approve, so it can seem like they're only able to help you manage your health decline with more meds. On the Dr. Kris Life podcast, you'll learn how you can regain your confidence in your health journey. You'll learn helpful knowledge about programs, supplements, peptides, and hormones that Dr. Kris has used with thousands of patients just like you to help them crush their goals and be their best selves. So if you're ready to take charge of your health and are wanting to stay active and healthy so you can be a better parent, partner, or lover, then you're in the right place. Welcome to the Dr. Kris podcast. All my years of going to the doctor, it seems like things are rushed. I feel embarrassed if I want to ask an additional question. I feel like I'm being a bit of a burden. And there's so many questions I have about my health, and it's important. And why is it that we may not feel comfortable asking our doctor to stop and focus on me and help me understand some things? Because it seems like if the doctor is driving my health and they have so many patients, how can they really be caring for me to their best if they're not considering my input? They're not considering my concerns. And I just think that the system is frustrating, at least from a patient's point of view. It must really be frustrating from a lot of physicians' point of view. Would you disagree, Dr. Kris?
No, I would completely agree with that statement. There's tons of frustrations on both sides of the fence, at least for physicians that have been doing this for a while. I always tell you that what really caused me to change paths in my career was two things: was my own health, and realizing that the pace that I was keeping up in my primary care practice, which I still say my hats off to those men and women who do that every day, because it's a really tough gig. Most average primary care physicians have to see 30 to 40 patients a day in order to make a living that they need to make in order to keep the lights on and keep things going. There's also this misperception that these doctors are making tons of money. They're really not, in my humble opinion, for the amount of education that they have put into it. You think about a doctor who goes to college for 4 years, and then goes to medical school for 4 years, and then goes to residency for a minimum of 3 years with minimal pay. Before they actually get to start making a real paycheck, they're already into their late 20s, early 30s. And so when you really put that into perspective, the hours that a physician puts into their practice before they actually get to make a living, I think sometimes that can help change the perspective of how much physicians make. The average primary care physician does not make a tremendous amount of money, but because costs become so high with, when I started with the clinic that I used to be with, it was myself, a nurse practitioner, and like 4 employees. When I left that practice, we had 4 providers total and over 25 employees. The amount of cost that was there was just incredible, in order to get everything billed and collected, and supplies, and just see the patients. And so I just saw the writing on the wall. And then Obamacare came out. And I'm not here to blast Obamacare. That's not the point of our podcast. But I remember something that President Obama at the time said that totally changed my perspective on everything. He literally said, and I don't remember this is an exact quote, but it's pretty damn close. He said, doctors should be happy because now they can see more patients every day, because more patients are going to have access to medical care. Very few physicians you run into want to see more patients every day, unless they're just starting their practice. Most physicians have more than enough patients to see. They want to know, how do I take care of these patients in the amount of time that I have? And that's what kind of prompted my change. Like I said, my own health and this really frustrating pace. I totally realized that there was no way I was going to able to do this for the rest of my life. I actually, a point in my career, and I haven't told many people this, I was looking at other alternatives outside of being a physician. I even looked at going back to law school, or going to law school, not back to, I never went, but, I just fell into this rut of like, I can't do this for the rest of my life. Now I was seeing the most complicated patients because I was running a county clinic, seeing, 25, 30 patients a day of 10 to 15 plus medicines on every patient. And I made a difference in those people's lives, but I realized that I felt like I could do more for these people if I just was able to. So as we've kind of talked about before, some of my mentors that I look so up to, like Dr. Uzi Rice or Dr. Erica Schwartz or Dr. Bill Seeds, docs that have been doing this for a long time. The thing that I hear all the time and I agree with is the system's completely broken. Um, if you're relying if you're 100% relying on your doctor to take care of you, you're probably going to be displeased with that at the end of the day, because this provider has so many things to do. As we talked about, most doctors have 10 to 12 minutes with you after the greetings of, hi, how's it going, Steve? How's the family? And then, okay, let's get into this. 10 to 12 minutes is what they have. And if you actually have some medical issues, I don't know how you can get that done in 10 to 12 minutes. So I always tell my patients, that's why what we do and what physicians who are doing more of this functional medicine model, is what one of the big advantages of it is just time face to face with your provider. Most of my patients are a minimum of visits are a minimum of 30 minutes, and sometimes they're an hour. And if we don't get it solved in an hour, I say, let's come back in 2 weeks and we'll do another 30 minutes or another hour. But the patients have to do their work as well. I can only do so much for my patients. The good news is I'm getting more and more highly educated patients, and I don't mean degrees. I mean like reading up on what's current and what changes can I make? Because as we always talk about, and where we'll go with these podcasts, is many times little small changes in our life make really big returns in a year and a half down the road. Um, this old thought of, and I still hear this sometimes, well, if I've got something wrong with me, I don't want to know it. Well, that is not going to work out well for you. I want to face it head on and try to, halt the problem, because most of the time we can, if we'll just work together. And, I will work for my patients as hard as they'll work for me. And I think that's how I try to tell my patients, you put a lot of effort into it, I'll put a lot of effort into it. You put no effort into it, well, I'll do the best I can with you, but the patient has to be just as invested as the provider. So it's a two-way street. But typically when you get into this type of environment where you're more in a functional medicine model, both people will be bought in.
I just think that the folks that are going to be enjoying this podcast, getting a lot out of it, are physicians that want patients who care about their health and want to contribute, want to take ownership in their health, and patients that are really appreciative of a physician that will spend time with them and help them understand how they can do better to show up for their family, to be effective at work, to be more, who just wants to be unhealthy the rest of their life? I hope not many people, but some people are going, there's got to be a better way. I see all these things that I can do, but they're not physicians. And I think I need to lean on a physician, but most of the physicians, in my experience, aren't that interested in talking about maybe your diet, other than the standard food pyramid or some junk.
Yeah. If I could say something to that first comment about physicians, you have to find a physician that walks the walk, a provider. I'll just say provider. It doesn't even have to be a physician. There's some good NPs out there, PAs. You have to find a provider that walks the walk. And I don't mean this badly, but you've certainly heard my story. But when I woke up at 34 and was 35% body fat and I looked in the mirror and I go, who the hell's going to listen to this guy? I'm in here trying to tell you to eat better when, and in their brain, they're going, you need to go eat better. And it was true. I'd let the job get the best of me. And don't get me wrong, as I tell all of my patients, life still gets the best of me at times. We all fall off the wagon at times and don't eat as well as we should, or exercise as hard as we should. There's very few that don't. And any of them that say they don't, they're lying to you. I always want my patients to know that I'm human just like they are. And I go through ups and downs with exercise and nutrition, but I don't let myself fall off that wagon and, fall, 4 counties behind. We try to stay up on it, and we just dust ourselves off and keep going. And I talk about these things with my patients. I talk about my weaknesses and what I struggle with, because you might relate. Then again, you might not. You might have different weaknesses. And I think that's just good conversations to have. So I always tell my patients, especially my new ones, I try to make every visit feel like a conversation, not a doctor's visit, because, I get the most out of biohackers and podcasters and things like that these days. I'm not saying that that's where I get my medical knowledge from, but I certainly get ideas from, like, wow, that's really interesting. Let me go research that and see what I can figure out about that. And I just think that, patients and providers having conversations is what needs to happen, where so much is just, you need to quit smoking, you need to quit drinking, you need to do this, this, and this, and boom, they go off to the next room. And it's like, okay, what the hell was the purpose of that visit? Or another medicine, instead of, maybe we don't need another medicine, or maybe we do, but how do we undo what's causing this problem? That's, what is going wrong to cause them now to have high blood pressure and diabetes and these things? What can we be doing to try to unwind this ball of yarn, instead of just another medicine, because that is what medical care in the United States for the most part has become, is another medicine. My simplest example of that is when I went into the medical field, when I graduated, medical school in 98, the initial treatment for diabetes type 2 was nutritional counseling. Now there is no such, when you go to the American Diabetes Association, they've taken out nutritional counseling. It's just medications. Day one, boom, medications. We don't even give the patients a chance to change their lives anymore. Why is that? Well, because doctors have gotten burned out on patients not wanting to try. And they just, well, why do this counseling? It's not going to do any good. That is true sometimes, but there are a lot of patients out there that really will change if we give them the dedication and time to do that. So unfortunately, it's not mainstream. I mean, that you do have to sometimes go off the beaten path to find providers that are really willing to work with you on your medical care. But it is available if you can. I know sometimes cost can be a problem for patients. That's why, at your office, we try to create different programs that maybe, hopefully most people can afford. We are a cash pay practice, but that's the only way we can pull this off, as being a cash pay practice. If I take insurance, I'm back to seeing 40 patients a day, and now I can't do this anymore. I mean, that's why sometimes patients are like, why don't you take insurance? I can't take insurance. I can't take insurance and do what we do. I won't make enough money to keep my lights on and keep my practice going. So that's why we don't take insurance. One of many reasons, I should say, actually. One of many reasons, but.
So if we thought about what's the real villain in this relationship? When we think about medicine, I think we've been programmed to think that we go get a prescription and we take one pill a day, and it's one size fits all mentality is one villain. The insurance really driving the initiative with most medicine would be a villain. What are some other villains that are in this story?
Well, and going back to the insurance, one of the other reasons I tell patients that I got out of the traditional medical model is because you don't work for your patients, you work for the insurance companies.
Mm.
And any patient that doesn't believe that's the truth has never been in a doctor's office for very long. They tell you what you can and can't order. If you order something and they don't like it, they make it so painful that eventually you give up, because who wants to sit on a phone call at the end of the day for 15 minutes trying to get, this approved whenever you've got 6 of them and they're all different insurance companies. So you got to have, 6 different phone calls to try to get these things ordered. So ultimately, no matter how energetic you may start off, you eventually fall for what they want you to do, because you give up at some point. You lose your spirit. It's like, I don't have time to be on the phone 2 hours a day to get these MRIs or CAT scans or whatever approved. So we'll do it their way. What can I do for my patients? What medicines can I prescribe? Um, and so that's just such a huge issue. Just the American way is one of the biggest issues. We've become a fast food, literally, or multiple fast food restaurants on every corner. We're all so busy. We all have, you know, these guys hanging around all the time. We're at instant, constant contact with the world. I was listening to a doctor who did a little podcast actually with Jim Quick the other day, and I always like hearing other physicians and how they talk to their patients, because it gives me clues how to talk to my patients, because I never claim I know it all by any means. And one of her things she tries to talk her patients into is set a time every day to just completely unplug from life. If you can, turn the Wi-Fi off, turn your phone off if you can, or just at least set it to the side for a few hours in the night and enjoy your family, or do something that we're not all IT driven. There's a lot of studies out there that even say maybe the Wi-Fi causes us some problems and anxiety and poor sleep. There's just, I just tell patients the biggest thing that's causes our problems these days is just the pace at what we live. I mean, we live at 110 miles an hour all the time. We never unplug. Most of us eat bad foods. We grab cheap, quick foods that are ultimately high inflammatory, high sugar, and just not good for us. Combined with a medical system that's broken, that isn't trying to fix us, it's just trying to put us on more medications. And it's just a recipe for disaster. And most people are not exercising. They're more sedentary. Even during the pandemic, I think it's made most people more sedentary, not less. I have a job where I'm fairly sedentary. I have to make sure that I get out there and exercise, or it's not going to be good for me long term. So I mean, I just think it's a combination of all those factors, plus many other things. Just patients making bad choices. We know that drinking is not good for us. I mean, there was a study that came out the other day, I believe it was in Europe, that basically said there is nothing good about alcohol. We've been told that, oh, well, it's good for our heart if you drink a little bit every day. And that might be a little bit true. The problem is all the bad things that alcohol does along with it. We drink a little bit, then we eat poorly, and then we are less likely to exercise. And if we do drink 1 or 2 drinks a day every day, we end up drinking 2 or 3 or 3 or 4 or 5 or 6. Everybody underemphasizes how much they drink. Oh, I just have a glass of wine at night. Well, how big is that damn glass? Is it a half a bottle of wine? What is it? As I tell my patients, and I still drink. I don't drink a lot anymore. And probably one of my big focuses of 2022 is actually to stop drinking completely. I really only do it socially. And that's really it. And I feel horrible the next day. I just don't physically feel good after I drink. And it's one of my, I don't have an issue with drinking. I'm by no means a heavy drinker. I wonder why I haven't been able to just completely cut it out of my life, because I don't see what good it adds. And so these are just different struggles, I think, that we all have.
Yeah. What I like about this relationship with you and these conversations is, as we've talked about it, I've assimilated it, and then I start to apply it, because once you kind of learn the truth about how your cell, the health of your cell is impacted by all these things, then it starts to make even more sense. Then, Steve, you need to consider your health of your heart health. But when we start to talk about cellular medicine, where your energy comes from, what you can do to help that cell be healthy, to fight viruses, all these things, it's totally changed the way that I considered my responsibility with my health. And so I stopped drinking. I've had 2 or 3 drinks for 30 years. I obviously I would admit that I probably made some poor business decisions, some poor life decisions, just because I didn't feel good, or I was under the influence maybe, or especially health decisions. But I want to take more charge of it. So I decided that, you know what? I'm going to hold myself accountable to do this thing that, for whatever reason, I talked myself out of doing. And that's like, once you go 3 months without having a drink, what's the big deal? What are you scared of? And I've done it. I feel great. But I was where you were. I had 2 beers with some tacos, the most perfect meal known
Right.
to man, right? The thing that we love to do. And the next day I felt like crap. And I finally asked myself, why? Why are you doing that when it impacts the next day?
Mm-hmm. No, I completely agree. But yet we all kind of go back to the trough of doing the same thing over and over that we know affects us. I'll give an example of my wife. She's had tremendous success lately, and it's all been because for years I've known that she had gluten sensitivity. I mean, she would eat gluten and then complain the next day about how her stomach hurt all day. And I'd be like, there's 1 + 1 = 2 going on here. And finally, one day she said, you know what, I'm going to cut gluten out of my diet. And then, oh my God, all of a sudden, and my wife is certainly, as you know, not overweight, but then she's been able to lose 3 or 4 pounds. Her bloating and just feeling, abdominal discomfort has gotten so much better. But why did it take her so long to come up with that decision? Because some of these things seem, I don't know, maybe we can't do it, or maybe it's going to be, I'm going to miss that so much and it's going to take plan and prepping. When actually it just takes a mindset of, you know what, I just want to feel better. I just want to do better. And realizing that these small changes, that inflammation that you put into your body by maybe eating a food that you're sensitive to or even allergic to, or drinking something that is causing you bad effects, and how that's going to linger for hours and days. And why? I mean, why do we really need to do that? We're all strong enough mentally to pull this off. I mean, certainly if you're addicted to alcohol, then you need to sit down with your provider and come up with a real plan. But if you're like I do, 2 or 3 beers a week, like, come on, you can just cut that out if you really want to. And I'm just about there. I really only drink now when I go to conferences, and I just, you still get in that social setting of everybody's drinking, and you kind of become like a teenager again. And that's not a good excuse, but like, oh, well, everybody's having a beer, I'll have a beer. I don't want to feel like the odd man out, that looks weird, like, oh, you won't drink with us, when actually nobody cares. I mean, if they do care, they're not your friend anyway. I respect people that say, no, I don't drink. I'm like, man, good for you. That's a good thing. So I really think like simple things like that. I see my patients for the first time, like soda and alcohol. Like, do you do either one of those, or do you do them both? Could you walk away from saying, I'm not going to drink soda anymore? Or can you say, you know what, I'm not going to drink alcohol for 3 months? Especially patients that want to lose weight and get healthier. I mean, I flat out tell my patients, if you won't give up soda, and by the way, that's diet or regular, if you won't give up soda, I won't help you, because you're not putting in any effort. I mean, if you tell me that soda is more important than losing weight, then what message is that sending your provider? I mean, seriously, you won't drink water? Because we know that like diet drinks are, I think, potentially worse than regular drinks for us. Our body can't tell the difference. Our body processes them as if it's a real drink. But the person that drinks diet drinks is under this misperception that they're calorie free and they're good for us. So instead of drinking like 1 12-ounce real Coke a day, they drink 5, 6, 7, 8 2-3 liters of Diet Coke a day. And I'm just like, oh my God, no wonder you can't lose weight. I mean, your body is just hooked on soda. And so, I mean, these are just small things. I mean, we see it all the time. Patients that just drop the Diet Coke out of their life, and it makes such a huge difference. But they've never had a provider actually sit down and explain it to them like that. I mean, it's such a simple concept, but they think, oh, if it's calorie free, it's good for me, or it's okay, and that's just not okay. It's not. So anyway, but yeah, no, I totally agree. I mean, some of these small changes that we can all make, and that's what we try to do, is we try to build upon things. We try to start simple. And you've got your patients that are ready to dive in deep from day one, and then you have your others that it's like the beach entry into the pool. It's kind of like, let's just slowly get ankle deep, waist deep, and then we'll finally dunk our head at some point. And that's really my job, is to get to know my patients and what they're ready for. Like, I'm dealing with a guy right now that I know that if I threw him off in the deep end, he wouldn't come back. I'll lose him. So we've got to hold hands slowly into the beach entry and just slowly wade out there until they're comfortable. But if you'll hang in there, they'll get comfortable. And those are just the patients that, if I was talking to another provider, you just got to bring them back frequently and just slowly do those 30-minute visits once a month. And man, you can make such big differences. There's nothing more rewarding to me than actually seeing my patients get healthy again, because that's just not something that I saw. Oh, I'm not going to say it never happened in primary care medicine. You would have that patient. I mean, I have a few that I think off the top of my head that I would always book them at the last patient of the day so I could spend 45 minutes with them. It was just, they knew that, hey, doc's probably going to be an hour behind when he gets to me, but he's going to spend 30 minutes with me, because they were trying, and I always said, if you showed me the effort, I'll show you the effort, even before I was doing functional medicine. But I mean, this was like one patient a month. I mean, that would actually make that kind of a profound impact on me as the provider, that, hey, Betsy's really trying to get better, so let's try to help her too. Most of them, did you send my script to Walgreens, doc? I mean, that's what they were really looking for. And that's just not to try to pay. Again, we mold traditional medicine with alternative medicine, with nutritional and educational counseling. We certainly still prescribe traditional medicines. I'm by no means saying that we shouldn't do those things, but let's also try to find the root cause of what's going on. Why is Mr. Smith not doing well? And can we maybe fix that problem so that maybe in 10 years, they're actually in better shape than they are today? And that's absolutely feasible for these patients.
Yeah, I think I remember you need to cut carbs out of your diet, Steve. So that's anything, rice and corn and potatoes and sugar or whatever. But I remember thinking, yeah, but beer's non-negotiable. Okay. Now I remember thinking that I'll do all that, but beer's non-negotiable. But I tell you what really made an impression on me is when we looked at my labs, starting labs, improving labs. But there was this one thing, my pancreas just was working too hard still. And when I realized that, it was like, why am I hanging on to this beer thing? I switched to the other alcohol, but I was like, why am I fighting this when it's obviously these labs are making sense to me?
Right.
And that was a big thing for me. But here I had this doctor working with me. We're studying my labs and I'm working against him. That didn't seem congruent to what I was wanting to achieve.
Yeah. And, also I think what helps is just, I always tell patients when they come in and see us, they go, wow, it seems like a big lab panel. And I go, wow, there's doctors that even do much bigger lab panels than I do. We can really, like I had one patient one time say they wanted every lab test that there was out there. And I go, okay, there's no such way to do that. Okay. And that would be like, I don't know, $100,000. I don't know. What would that cost? We try to do bigger panels to predict health down the road, because I love talking about diabetes because it's the easiest one to discuss. It's the one that most of us are all fearful of. We can really do labs to find out. Well, let's back up. They say that the average time that you've been a diabetic when diagnosed by a doctor is 5 years. So most patients have been a diabetic for 5 years before the primary care physician says, Steve, you're now a diabetic. when actually, if you're doing the proper labs, I can tell you usually 2 to 3 years before you become a diabetic that you're going to be a diabetic, so that we can prevent that step from ever occurring. And the key there is listening to your patients, looking at your patients. I can tell my patients generally that have insulin resistance many times when they just walk through the door. You just see it on them. They just ooze it from, being overweight and inflammation and redness and all these things, just going, I can tell this guy, if he's not insulin resistant, he's gonna be insulin resistant. And I see it all the time. I just got a labs today that I told a guy, you're going to be insulin resistant, but you're not yet. And he hasn't listened to me. And guess what? His labs show now he's insulin resistant. So maybe he'll listen now. But doing those labs also, that we can start to predict some of these things before they occur. Now, I am a physician that believes labs aren't everything. If we rely on the labs, many times it's going to fail us, because by the time the labs show things, we've already kind of missed the boat. But we know that, hey, Bill, you're 35 pounds overweight and you're 55 and you're not exercising, and we know where this is going to go if we don't do something about it. If this patient requires me to show them labs that show this, well, we're waiting too long. We could be already working on this. The good news is usually my patients that are coming to me that are overweight, they're coming to me because they know that that's going to cause a problem. They want to feel better. Anybody that's ever gained 20, 30 pounds and then lost it's always going to tell you how much better they feel. I weigh now what I weighed at 34, but my body fat was 35% and now is 16ish. And so, how I feel even at 49 is tremendously better than it was at 34. I'm not saying I don't have maybe a knee that hurts a little more or a shoulder that hurts a little more, but if you had to make me choose literally how I feel at 49 versus 34, I'd choose 49 all day long. We can age gracefully. It is possible. We can slow down the aging process. We can't stop it, but we can help it. I tell my patients all the time, I think I'm going to give you more quantity of life, but what I'm really trying to do is give you that quality of life. I want my patients to be able to, because I don't know about you, but I don't necessarily want to retire at some point in my life. I do at some point in my life want to be able to work as many hours as I want to work, but why do most people retire? Most people retire because they can't physically do the job anymore. Either their mind goes or their body goes, and they just can't physically handle the work day any longer. I don't want it to be that way. If I ever do fully retire, it better be because I chose to do that for myself. But hopefully what I choose is just to work till the end and maybe just not work as many hours. That's what, and my patients seem to really grasp onto that. As I always say, I'm a very simplistic person. You would not change the oil in your truck. You would, ever, realizing that if you don't do maintenance on your vehicle, that it's going to ultimately crap out on you before it's supposed to. The engine's going to lock up, bad things are going to happen. But yet most people put no form of maintenance or effort into their bodies. They don't put the same effort into their bodies as they would with their vehicle, or sometimes money. Like, one of the things when patients give me a hard time about spending money on their healthcare, I'm like, but yet you drive that truck out there with a 4-inch lift with $5,000 aftermarket tires and all this stuff, but yet you're kind of hassling me today about spending $300 or $400 on your health today. I mean, it just doesn't make sense. And I'll say it nicely, but usually that'll really kind of refocus them. It'll obviously go one of two ways from that point. They'll either buy in or they'll never come back. But sometimes I have to do that with my patients to really say, hey, where are we at with this? So anyway.
Yeah, I think that's what we're looking for. Is we've got doctors looking for patients who want to participate, and it's fulfilling to see people get healthy. It's fulfilling to see people be more active and satisfied with life. And then there are folks coming at it from my perspective, and I enjoy having a relationship with a physician that takes away the confusion, the many conflicting messages, and helps me have more peace about I'm doing things that are being respectful to my body, which I want to feel better. I want to be more active and effective in my job. I want to show up and be a good leader for my team. I want to be a good leader for my clients. And you
Mhm.
can't do that if you have a hangover or you feel bad or you're like worried about something physical that's distracting you from just being the best that you can be in your life.
Even if you're just overweight and you can't, you can't move around and be as agile and be as energetic. What I would go back to is doctors who are looking at doing this. If you're living the life and if you're living a healthy lifestyle and you look healthy and you feel good, you're going to attract patients that want the same. Patients that then start coming to you, you're going to find that they become healthier. Patients that literally come to your door are already healthy. Like patients that come to me now, they would have been my top 3% in my primary care practice back in the day. These patients still feel like I'm not healthy. And, they really want to take it up to the next notch. It's like an athlete, your high end athletes always want to take it to the next notch. What can I do differently? How can I improve 0.5% on my performance? What can I do to do that? So it starts to build as providers and it's one of the things that I do is talking to providers that want to get into this field of medicine is just you have to start with yourself. You have to show others that you can do this. If you aren't living the life and doing your part, you're probably going to have a hard time getting off the ground. um, so like-minded people find each other is kind of what I feel. And as I tell my patients, I'm not right for everybody. I have a certain way of describing things and saying things, and I like things really simplistic. I tell everybody, I'm joking when I say this, but I'm just a West Texas kid that likes to say it that way, that likes to keep it really simple so that I can understand it. If I can understand it, you can understand it. And that's how I like to do that. Other patients want really, these big eloquent speeches on why to do this, that, and the other. And we can do that if they want. But most patients just want some simple guidance on how can I do things a little bit better. I mean, like we've talked about, like just adding in sodium bicarb to your diet every day. We have this, our bodies are acid and base, just like back in chemistry, and we're supposed to be more basic, but most of us tend to be more acidic because where do our basics come from? That comes from fruits and vegetables. What do most of us not eat enough of? Fruits and vegetables. Most of us eat tons of meat and processed foods and boxed foods that have a lot of acid in them. So we live in this acidic environment, which especially the intracellular aspect of our cells want to be basic. It affects our immune system. So what are some simple things that we can do to just live a little better? Eat more green vegetables, and mix in sodium bicarb, which we always talk about Alka-Seltzer Gold because it's so easy to use. And it has to be Alka-Seltzer Gold, not Alka-Seltzer, because the gold is just literally sodium bicarb, baking soda. You can use baking soda, but it's powdery and it kind of gets everywhere, where the Alka-Seltzer Gold is cheap. You have to get off Amazon. It's the only place you can get it, but you can drop a couple of those in a bottle of water, shake it up, and drink it with lunch and dinner, and really make some significant changes. Just like you and I talked about, and I'll just briefly mention it, just by simply being more basic inside can have a multitude of positive effects. Our immune system, our skin. By being basic, we're going to have less inflammation. Our skin is going to look better. Our bones, whenever we're more acidic, are trying to rob these basic buffers from our bone. So we become osteoporotic or osteopenic and osteoporotic as we age because we're too acidic. So our body's taking magnesium and calcium from the bones to try to buffer our acid that we have in our body. Whereas if we were already a little more basic, we'd leave that calcium and magnesium in the bones and not be trying to pull from them. It has an effect on our blood sugar control. So we're less likely to become diabetic by being a little bit more basic. So, I mean, those are just some of the really, really simple things. A couple of doses of baking soda every day can really do an amazing thing for our body. And we've got so many different tips like that for our patients, when they come in. It's just trying to start a program with them and seeing where they're at.
I'm looking forward to the further conversations on this. This has been excellent, Dr. Kris, and I appreciate you taking the time. This is what people want. They want a physician that will take them serious and listen to their questions and help them think it through. And there are physicians out there that they're probably been feeling that feeling like you had long ago, where you made the decision to leave insurance-based medicine and start to go to private pay. Those are scary things. I'm sure it was a big step. Maybe in the next conversation, we kind of talk about that transition and all the ways that you had to wrestle with it before you made the final call and how it looks like on the other side. That's why don't we do that?
Excellent. I'd love to do that. One of my favorite topics.
All right. Perfect. So I think we are landing on a domain. It's going to be drkris.life. That would be drkris.life. By the time that this goes live, this recording goes live, I believe we'll have that domain set up. So I'm excited about it. Life. We're talking about life. The very thing that can take the joy out of life is being unhealthy. And so why not take some steps, take more control. We don't need permission from the insurance company. We don't need permission from our physicians to start to take more control of our health. We just need a partner like Dr. Kris.
Thanks, Steve. I really appreciate it.
Yeah. All right. And that's a wrap. Thanks for joining the Dr. Kris podcast. If you learned something today and you want to connect and get more information, visit our website, www.drkris.life, where you can find more great to learn how you can engage with Dr. Kris. Be sure to follow, like, share, and we'll see you on the next episode of the Dr. Kris podcast.